They protest on religious liberties for Muslims to build a mosque right by Ground Zero, but they sue Christians for not participating in a gay wedding ceremony. Liberals are outraged when a white police officer kills a black person, but when blacks are killing other blacks far more often, they are not so outraged. When a white person is accused of a college rape, whether it's true or not, it's a front page story for weeks, and the illegal immigrant who has raped several young girls younger than 10 years old is in some obscure paragraph on the last page that nobody ever sees. When an Islamic radical shoots up a gay nightclub, they are not upset with Islam, but of conservatives and toxic masculinity. Liberals have worked to ban references to God and Christian prayers in school, but simultaneously fight for the right for Muslims to pray in school. When prisons are overcrowded, they are not upset with criminals, but law enforcement for putting them away, even if they are committing crimes. They chant free speech all the time, but actively work to suppress it from their opposition over and 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 over again.
Traumatized this week, the little darlings. They entered the quad to see this. Avert your eyes if you're sensitive. It says Trump 2016 written in chalk. In rather well-styled font, I think. The graffiti inspired a campus-wide protest, during which some students confessed the artwork made them fear for their very lives.
But someone free from any attachment would surely recognize that an ideology that can only be successful if it violates its own principles cannot be truth. When bringing this up to liberals, many of them believe this selective indignation is not hypocrisy because when they choose what's right, it's nothing more than universal consent and everyone agrees on this point, and it will seem that way to a loyal soldier to the liberal brigade, because what's normal and reasonable and rational are what loyal liberals deem to be so. Liberalism is so certain of its interpretation of mankind, history, and society, they believe they are so correct that opposing them is proof the other person is stupid, and when this happens we may be fairly sure that we are dealing with ideological thinking. There is an easy way to test whether we are dealing with objective reason or simply an ideology by asking what evidence, observations, experiments might conceivably prove you wrong. When they fail to answer, this is a dead giveaway that his belief is not an assertion of truth about what is or isn't true in the real world, but an ideology. And ideology carries with it the primary function to adjust attitudes and not state truths about reality. According to liberalism, those in undesirable conditions must be the exploited victims of poor education and bad institutions. It has to be this way because the liberal ideology says so. The belief that problems for minorities is because of institutional racism is derived solely from ideology, untainted by even the most indirect touch of a single fact. We have a black president, a black attorney general, black director of Homeland Security, black Supreme Court justices, black mayors, black police chiefs, black doctors, black lawyers, and countless examples of blacks in America who have become enormously successful. Yet it is some abstract theory of institutional racism that is still the culprit, keeping black Americans in poverty against their will.
Scan the internet and you're bound to see racial pride hashtags and movements. But there's still one pride movement that's considered a serious faux pas. Can you guess which one? Whiteness. Whiteness is being white. It's racism to racism. Racism, whiteness. Racially insensitive about cultural appropriation, doing the intersection. Where he's racist? It's in an oppressive culture problem with cultural appropriation. Cultural appropriation. We're all racist with white supremacy. White marginalized people by a white system and oppressed them.
This will happen because they're not helping the black community. Like, the rich people, they got all this money and they're not trying to give us none.
There are plenty of examples showing how liberalism is both for and against free speech, for and against democracy, for and against peace, for and against freedom of religion and self-determination. What these collective hypocrisies and selective indignation show is that liberalism itself is a bundle of crass contradictions that lead liberalism to say one thing while doing another and still saying a different thing out of the other side of their mouth. This is proof that liberalism is falseness, creating a set of rules and principles that can only be successful if you violate all of them along the way shows that it is not truth.
Ultimatum to get money out of politics.
You do know that George Soros is funding some of the groups that are helping to organize this rally, right?
I don't know if Soros, he's backing Hillary.
You sure about that?
I'm absolutely sure. I'm the Deputy Campaign Director for Democracy Spring. We have received $0.00 from George Soros. We are getting money from certain endorsing organizations, but not from a big donor.
Can you tell me some of them, who they are?
Sure, Avaz, Energy Action Coalition.
Our votes aren't mattering anymore.
Too many billionaires in politics.
You've got it right, yeah.
What does your shirt say?
MoveOn.org. I'm a proud member.
Okay, MoveOn.org is funded by a billionaire.
But I'm not funding him. I'm just using them as a vehicle.
But you think politics would be better without him? Without George Soros?
Yes.
The organization that you're part of?
Right.
That is very
I'm not-
confusing. What would you do if you had $1 million?
I would buy politicians to get this issue solved.
You would buy politicians to get the issue of people buying off politicians solved?
Yeah.
And I don't believe in dirty, filthy, lying politics.
Okay, so who are you going to vote for? Can I ask you who you're going to vote for?
You can count on it. I'm voting for Hillary Clinton.
Hold on, folks. She just said she's against lying, corrupt politicians, but she's voting for Hillary Clinton.
According to the liberal ideology, everything is relative, so you can't say it's right or wrong, which is why everyone deserves a voice. But in order to make this work, they have to also give conservatives a voice, and that is not something they want to do. So they have to violate their own principles and screen conservatives out. It is blatant hypocrisy that doesn't add up, because liberalism is falseness.
Value of tolerance and acceptance of other people. How important a value is that to you?
Number one, plus.
Tolerance an important value?
Yeah, absolutely. Tolerance, inclusiveness.
I mean, really high. I mean, I don't know how to put words to it.
That's how important it is.
Yes.
I think it's probably the number one issue in the country today.
Tolerance and acceptance is so unbelievably important because we all have something to offer.
Are those Republicans assholes?
Oh yeah.
Bunch of assholes, excuse my French. But I'm not a judgmental person. I don't judge.
They're devious, racist,
So dumb.
sexist, evil. It's sick. Fascist.
I mean, disgusting.
Absolutely.
Racism and hatred.
This proves liberalism is not a sound doctrine, but a fraud scheme that constantly has to change its stance in order to make it work. Even the ardent liberal knows he's guilty. It is a fact that the liberals of the affluent society, by not yielding their power and privileges more fully and more quickly, are guilty. Guilty precisely of betraying their own principles. The liberals call for free speech, but suppress it from their opposition, call for religious liberty, but constantly attack Christianity. They complain about violations of privacy from government spying, while simultaneously supporting violating the privacy of little girls and transgender bathroom laws. The social justice warrior at the prestigious college who condemns white people for their privilege, yet is currently taking advantage of the opportunity of attending a prestigious college unavailable to others. But this hypocrisy is justified to the liberal because they are chanting and marching for the poor, arguing that society should change without offering to give up their own advantages. Liberal theories of human nature and social progress, and the liberal belief that ignorance is the primary obstacle to the good society, is false. The logic of the liberal doctrine of free speech and the liberal program to remove all social discrimination is self-refuting in practice. But none of this matters to the liberal.
But you completely misquote the LA Times. You make it sound as if they're saying something that they're not saying, and you're using that as evidence to back up your position.
Anderson, it doesn't matter.
I mean, what you said is, guess what? The LA Times reported yesterday that the platform
what I'm saying,
was...
it doesn't matter.
But none of this matters to the liberal. Anything that strengthens liberalism is right and just and good. Violating the rights of others and suppressing opposition only enables its party to tear down existing structures, but it does not equip it to run governments, because an ideology that relies on breaking the rules in order to function is not a just or noble government, but one that either proves incapable of running a sound society or has to continue the habit of breaking the rules and abusing its power, subjectively indignating this or that, and changing rules as it chooses, leading to confusion and chaos. Liberalism shows its danger by willfully breaking its own rules, especially in regards to suppressing the free speech of its opposition.
Why are you taking those down?
It's offensive.
It's offensive?
Yeah.
But we're doing our event and it's on October 4th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's offensive.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not.
It's offensive. And this is my freedom of speech.
Yeah, it's freedom of speech. So is ours.
This is my freedom of speech.
So it's freedom of speech to infringe on our freedom of speech?
My university's police department demanded we either censor our free speech wall or face criminal charges. And it was basically a wall that we decided you could write whatever you wanted on it, like all the student groups that were involved. So we had every aspect of the political spectrum all participating, all coming together on this really important issue. And on the back, someone had wrote in big purple ink, F Obama, right? And so, I mean, there were F this, F that all over the wall, right? So it wasn't just that. And a professor came by and he saw it, and someone pointed me out as the organizer of the event, and he came up to me and he was like, young lady, you need to take this down, this is offensive. I basically told him, we've gotten permission to do this, we're not taking it down, it's a free speech wall, we're letting students write whatever they want to. So he's like, fine, I'll take care of it myself. So he went back to his office, came back downstairs with a box cutter. And the professor literally came out with his box cutter. and cut the part of the wall that he didn't like out and threw it in the trash can. When the police officer showed up, we thought, you know, he was gonna help us out. Our free speech wall had just been attacked. We had gone through the proper channels. This was our property. We had spent money on building this wall, and he actually told us we had one of three options. We could either take down the wall, cover up all the F words on the wall, or we could put up new paper and censor what people wrote. If we didn't comply with one of their options, we were actually threatened with a misdemeanor. And I was like, okay, so just so I'm clear, it's free speech is legal until it offends someone? And he was like, yes.
This is what makes liberalism such a difficult opponent for conservatism. You can only play a game with those who accept and agree to abide by the rules. But when the left insists on playing the game, but doesn't need to follow the same rules whenever they choose, they become a difficult opponent to defeat. The meaning of free speech and other related freedoms is only important and able to be valued and protected by those who wish to preserve a free and constitutional society. For others, such as the left, whose motive is to overthrow and replace this constitutional society with a better one, where things are more equal and freedoms need to be sacrificed in order to achieve it, the rules are malleable enough that they can use their own judgment in order to advance their own agenda. The reason that they're able to do this and still feel good about themselves is because they believe they are doing it in our best interest.
You've written a trilogy of books about people you call the anointed, which are basically liberals in American society. What do you mean by calling them anointed or self-anointed?
That's right. There are people who seriously believe that they are wiser and nobler than others. And the way to improve society is to have the government force people to follow what the anointed want rather than let people do what they themselves want to do. And there are all kinds of fiascos that follow in the wake of this kind of notion.